Speakers that are going to be really, what they are going to say is really interesting, and they are going to enter into detail in the action of the European Union in all the preparation works for the Beijing+25 event. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Clara Girbau. I'm a diplomat. I was appointed in 2008 for the ambassador in special mission for conciliation and equality policies. And within the ministry, I'm one more leg in the whole transversalization of gender policies framework in our foreign policies. We work very closely with the rest of the ministries on this, and we try to implement our internal policies of the ministry, dealing with all equality systems, policies or issues. And this is a message given by this government to the importance of transversalization issues. Everybody knows that Beijing+25 is a challenge, with no doubt. With all commitments and the risk, or acquired commitments, and the risk is within the European Union. You only have to see all the debates and conversations that are being carried out on reproductive sexual rights or the participation of women in the civil society. This is like this, and in order to work on this, we need to acknowledge it. As surely Spain is doing their homework in all fronts. Spain has presented already the national report for Beijing+25, which is published, and that I'm sure that you know better than me. And we have a firm commitment for proposals on a multilateral level in terms of the different events that are going to be done. Leadership commitment for that are going to be presented, and we're going to use as many fora as possible to convey this message. In the United Nations, the 2025 commitment has been recently launched to achieve a higher commitment by women on peace processes with time until 2025. And we know that we have a very solid cooperation to development on this matter. The contribution to the drafting of the goal number 5 of the 2030 agenda. The ministry has worked a lot and has adopted their own transversality that is going to be used in all Spanish policies. Coming back to the challenges within the European Union and its member states, we have two people that are really knowledgeable about the main difficulties and also the main advantages, the main strong points, weak points and strong points. We need to insist on this. We are going to be based on an essential document that serves as a diagnosis for the, it is drafted by the European Gender Equality Institute. Well, I'm going to introduce these two speakers. Firstly, Mrs. Luigia Di Gisi. She's the Director of International Politics in charge of gender equality in the European Service for Foreign Action. This is a position with a global vision on what can be done in this matter. She has been directing programs within the European Commission, and she has a big background on all equality and human rights topics or issues. Mrs. Helena Morais, who is the representative person or the representative for the European Institute for Gender Equality, EIGE. She currently works at the European Institute as a researcher on transversalization and gender areas. Since 2014, this is a very important aspect or scope And a lot of people devoting their work on this are getting a lot of inspiration from her webpage or the webpage of the Institute. She has a lot of background on knowledge about gender equality and cooperation topics. Incredibly enormous, important knowledge. In principle, you have 15 minutes for the presentation.
Spanish, so there will be no problem. Y después Helena.
Then Helena will speak secondly. Thank you to everyone, and thank you very much for this invitation.
As mentioned, I'm responsible for the EU policy on gender equality in the external action, so meaning with the partner countries and in international fora. I work in close coordination with other services of the European Union, and one of the point that I have a presentation structured around 4 or 5 messages that I want to pass on. First of all, let me start in terms of anniversary. Well, last year in 2018, the Universal Declaration on Human Rights turned 70 years. So the EU position on gender equality is that when we talk about gender equality, we talk about the full enjoyment of all human rights by women and girls. So this is something that, it's a key priority for the European Union. Gender equality and women's and girls' rights are part of the EU treaties, and since then have been a key political priorities of the EU, reflected in the policy framework. Now, over last years, the European Union has indeed reinforced the legal and the policy frameworks on gender equality. And the main, let's say, attempt from all services is to work on the internal and external coherence. That means that what we try to fix and to establish in terms of gender equality for member states, so internally within the European Union, is the same that we do outside. When we have meetings with the partner countries, just to give you an idea, and gender equality is regularly on the agenda of our political and human rights dialogue with partner countries, we insist on the opportunity to comply with the international legal framework, with the international human rights law. And it's true that the EU leads by example, but as previous speakers mentioned, we still face internal issues. And as the EU, we try to push to defend the EU position on women's and girls' rights without undermining what we have achieved so far. I can say that I'm the person negotiating the EU position in international fora, and sometimes the discussion with the 28 member states takes weeks, sometimes months. But as the EU, there is no intention and no openness to undermine our position, including on sensitive topics such as sexual and reproductive health rights, such as comprehensive sexuality education, and so on. And it's a clear position. We have an agreed language there, and we try to maintain the minimum as agreed, and we try to defend and to maintain the agreed position in international fora. When I mentioned that the EU policy and the political framework on gender equality, from a thematic point of view, we have mainly, our focus is on stepping up action to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls. Secondly, we insist a lot on the empowerment empowerment of girls and women. I think that one of the things that, one of the key messages that we want to pass on is that women and girls, unfortunately, even today, are survivors of all forms of violence, but they are not simply survivors, they are key actors, they are key players, and they make the difference in the daily life at all levels, at local level, regional level, international level, and we need to give them all the instruments to empower their role. This means in the labor market, this means in the family, this means in the decision-making position, this means even in the processes related to peace and security, where the role of women as mediator is key and maybe even more relevant than actual. So there is a clear idea to focus on this thematic priority as mentioned, but at the same time, as I mentioned before, the EU has the ambition to lead by example. Leading by example means that we need to ensure gender parity, first of all, within European service and European institution. The evidence and the data that we have currently at our disposal confirms that we are not perfect. I think that we should be, really honest, and I'm here with you in a very transparent mood. We have several issues internally, but when you compare the data at our disposal today in 2019 with the data that we had in 2014, 2015, we made progress. We had more women in leading a position. My boss, Federica Mogherini, is quite vocal and strong on gender equality. 2 days ago, she was the EU representative in the UNGA event on the Spotlight initiative that the Ambassador for Mexico mentioned before. And it's true that now we are in the phase that a new commissioner, a new college of commissioner is about to take function, and the designated prime commissioner insisted on gender equality as a key priority and insisted on the opportunity and on the necessity to have gender parity within the College of Commissioner. And I had a look at the organigram, and this is a reality. Now, I want also to make the point that it's very nice to see such a room with plenty of women, but one of the key messages is that gender equality is not business for women and girls. And we really need to have a stronger involvement and participation by boys and men. Their role is really key in advancing gender equality. And one of the key messages of the new commissioner is that each of the commissioners making the new college, they have a target and they have objective to achieve in terms of gender equality, despite their sexual orientation. So, this is their sexual identity. So this is one of the points that we have to make. I just also wanted to give you some elements on the multilateral fora, because over the last year we have experienced a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities in multilateral fora. When I talk about multilateral fora, I refer to the Commission on the Status of Women as the main forum to advance and to make progress on gender equality. But believe me, it's not the only focus. Over the year, you have the opportunity to push, to advance our gender equality agenda. For example, in Geneva, there are 3 sessions per year of the Human Rights Council, and gender equality is very high on the agenda. Over the year, there are new resolutions of violence against women. There is the recent ILO Convention against harassment at work. There are progress that we are making. So no one at this stage, no single country has achieved gender equality, and I don't think that it will be the case by 2030. According to the data that I saw yesterday, we need more than 100 years to fill the gap. But I think that one of the main messages that I wanted to give you today is that we have to work together. I mean, the objective is ambitious, but it's not something that we can do alone. And as the European Union, and I really want to pay tribute to civil society organization, because no one single action funded, supported by the European Union can produce and can benefit all women and girls without the key role of civil society organization and human rights defenders, including women human rights defenders. I was in Geneva in June, where the negotiation on the modality resolution took place, and the European Union was really vocal on insisting and including in the resolution the key role of women human rights defenders. I think that we are playing our role with a lot of limits, but it's something that, I mean, I really count on the key role, the key work by civil society organization. You can count on us. I think that with all the limits, as I mentioned, that we have, but I think that the next year is really a critical year. We need to engage, we need to strengthen our partnership in order to deliver and to get a result. Let me also add one point on the Spotlight Initiative. This is really a major initiative that the European Union launched 2 years ago. The focus of the Spotlight Initiative is on violence against women, so eliminating all forms of violence against women. And it's a quite exemplary form of a partnership between the European Union, the United Nations, with all the different UN agencies, and the civil society organization. I have been there since 2017, and I can confirm that no single programming action plan is in place without involving civil society organization in the respective countries. And again, after 2 years, when we are about to see the first result of such a massive investment of 500 million euro, I mean, I can confirm that it's not possible without you. So I hope that having me today here, it's also a good, I mean, it's a way to give the perception that the European Union is not so far, we are not in Brussels, far from the reality and the situation. And we have a regular meeting with the civil society representation from Brussels, from the African continent, from Latin America. I mean, there is, I mean, we don't have any limitation. And honestly speaking, this partnership, this close cooperation make the difference in the long terms. So I think that I can stop here. I'm more happy to respond to your question, and many thanks for having given me the opportunity to take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good overview of what you were saying. Helena.
Hola, muy buenos días a todas.
Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Thanks to the European Institute of Equality, and congratulations to the feminist movement and the Institute for Women on celebrating this event. To me, personally speaking, it's great to be at home. I'm from Galicia, and it's great to participate and present the results or an advance of the results in terms of monitoring the Beijing implementation since 2013. This is our 5th report, and what we've analyzed is if there has been progress or not, or delay or not, since 2013. The report will be officially issued in Helsinki on Monday, as the ambassador has mentioned this morning, the ambassador from Finland, and it covers some things, pending challenges and new challenges. So we've decided to have an approach towards the current challenges that the European Union is facing, as well as other parts of the world, because many of these challenges are global. For example, climate emergency, migration flows, digitization, and new technologies, and especially the backlash in the gender equality progress. So we've adopted an intersectional point of view on the basis of the available data. Okay. On the screen, I'm seeing something different. Okay. So I will not follow the presentation through the results on the 12 areas, but only the aspects that we've considered as key, and at the same time they are common to the 12 areas. As regards economy and all the areas that are linked to the macroeconomic indicators and sustainable development, the unproportional burden of the non-paid work that is still done by women. There hasn't been any progress here, and just for you to have an idea, women still work 13 hours more a week than men in terms of caretaking, household tasks, etc. Women that are out of the labor market because of having to take care of somebody, we are speaking about almost 8 million women that do not access the labor market, and when we ask them why, the answer is because I have some responsibilities, I have to take care of somebody. And this situation only happens in 500,000 men in the European Union. So when we ask the people that work on partial time basis why they work on partial time basis, 9 million women tell us that they work in that way because they have some caring responsibilities. So that's the main reason, and 600,000 men are facing the same situation. So not only in terms of caretaking, but also in terms of household chores, we see that 80% of women do these household tasks every single day, compared to the 33% of men in the European Union. So 1 out of every 3 men does some chores, compared to 80% of women. On a global scale, we still have a situation that has to do with, it comes from 1995, it was already reported, and it is the action that this contribution of women to economy, because of the need of these caretaking tasks to sustain life, is not included in the macroeconomic indicators. So the GDP does not include this contribution. And the economy, for example, the well-being economy models that are under discussion in Europe under the presidency of Finland have not progressed in that respect. So we still are like in 1995. We see that as regards the gender employment gap, there has been no progress. We still have an 11.5 percentual points. We've progressed a little bit in terms of the, after the economic crisis in 2008, regarding the global employment rates, but the gender gap is still the same. Apart from that, women work is more precarious and automated. So this is related to 2 main things. First of all, everything that has to do with horizontal segregation in terms of employment and the decision when studying and choosing a degree, or the fact that women are still studying less considered degrees and with lower working possibilities in the future, it has a direct impact on the gender pay gap, because they are worse considered and worse paid. We've also seen that since 2013, we need to analyze the market from an intersectional point of view, and we find higher poverty rates and higher vulnerabilities among migrants or Roma, disabled or lone mothers. There's an underrepresentation of women in decision-making positions, and what has been mentioned has a negative impact on women's physical and mental health. Women live longer, but when we speak about good health, they have a good life expectancy, higher life expectancy, but there's a survey about the health perception. We see that the quality of life of women is worse than men's, because they have health problems for more years in terms of mental health, for example. And we know that there's a higher rate of depression among women, and this has also been analyzed. We see clear lines with social status of women and the impact of combining double or triple burden in terms of being in the labor market, and at the same time they assume the caretaking and household chores. We've mentioned public infrastructures and public services and the impact that they have in the imbalance in terms of paid work. The data tell us that 1 out of every 3 households in the EU has problems in order to face the financial expenditures when affording children care. So for example, in terms of access to university, etc.
Tercio de los Estados miembros desde el 2013.
A third of member states since 2013 have included some measures to face the situation, creating more places, nursery services, and from the point of view of the cost of these services. Anyway, the goals have not been accomplished yet. They have the first indicator is to have a 33% of available places for children between 0 and 3 years in nurseries, etc. We are in 32.9, 33. Second one that has to do with places for children between 3 and 6-7 years has not been accomplished yet. The goal is 90% of children with place, but we've only accomplished 86%. This is the first step. Second step would be to analyze these services from the point of view of their quality and from the point of view of the cost, the real impact that they have for families. We've seen and we've analyzed in terms of long-term services that there's some kind of distortion in the member states, but there's a clear pattern. And in every member state, women are overrepresented in caretaking chores, and part of this work is not regulated. Every flexible work model, flexi-security, different teleworking modes, etc., have a potential in terms of conciliation, but we've seen that they could have some repercussion in terms of reinforcing the gender inequalities. There are some data that say that men that are using these different modalities, in the majority of the cases, they use them to cover professional goals, and they are awarded, they are rewarded because of accomplishing their professional goals. And meanwhile, women use them to conciliate, for the family conciliation, and it is being done from a professional point of view. And they, well, we have to be careful with the models because they can make gaps deeper. In terms of parental and family leaves, there's a high level of variety on European scale. We've mentioned the new European directive this morning, and yes, if it is implemented well, it has room for opportunities in order to progress. And one of the results is the lack of gender perspective in the social protection systems that consider the family as a whole, skipping all the gender imbalances that could take place in the households, all the tax systems that do not include the gender perspective. And in the case of Spain, for example, we know that these systems, in many cases, are more focused on the standard ways of paid work, and they have not been adapted to the changes that have taken place in the labor world. Many working modalities, part-time work, or going in and out of the labor market are ways of work that, where women are in a bigger number, and there are some judgments that set whether they generate inequality of they are an example of discrimination. So in this case, the climate emergency. Well, we have a goal that is being negotiated right now, so that 25% of the EU budget goes to fulfill climate goals. The report says that the gender perspective has to be included in the agenda. Without any kind of doubt, every models and technology that improve the energy efficiency can transform this work and reduce the energy poverty, the non-paid work, energy poverty that affects women mainly. And at the same time, we see how the waste reduction and recycling, etc., is being assumed by women on a private scale, increasing the responsibilities and burdens in terms of household chores, etc. So it's important to guarantee that in this climate emergency, this new gender perspective is existing. Everything that has to do with finance for gender equality. Well, we've analyzed the structural funds of the EU, have analyzed the contribution of the European Social Fund, FEDER, Fishing Fund, etc. and less than 1% of this finance is aimed at equality measures. So, to conclude about this, currently the energy and climate approach doesn't have a gender perspective in the EU, and women are underrepresented in decision-making processes and in key sectors. So out of every ministers of the EU, there are 30% of ministers that are women. In terms of energy companies, we don't have a lot of information, and for renewable energies we don't have European data. But just to put an example, in the case of England, just 6% of every top management officers are women, only 6%. I know that I'm running out of time, but I would like to highlight migration, and I'll close with violence and backlash. As regards migration, the report highlights that the migration policy of the EU highlights the security with a special approach on outer borders. We would like to call the attention about the need of making gender perspective transversal here, and to pay special attention to the needs and specific interests of migrating women. There has been a progress in outer action, in foreign action, but especially in terms of diplomatic service abroad, we haven't seen any progress. In 2003, 22% of women were chiefs of foreign missions, and in 2018, we are in 21% of women. Just a reflection about migrating women in Europe. 1 out of every 2 migrant women are in high risk of poverty. 1 out of every 5 young migrant women, and we have to focus on what happens with migrant women, are in a more vulnerable situation. They neither study nor receive any employment or training. And 1 out of every 2 migrant women in the EU are not in employment. And the women that are seeking for asylum face different challenges. The bureaucracy is not gender sensitive. We have not made them transversal, and they are at risk of suffering violence, not only during the process of arriving to the EU, but also when they are in the EU. Violence against women. 51% of women in the EU have experienced sexual harassment. 1 out of every 3 women in the EU are affected by physical or sexual violence, and 80% of women, parliamentarian women in the EU, have experienced psychological violence. I would like to mention that 41% of parliamentary women have seen their public image exposed on social media, in things that had to do with sexual content or humiliating images for their physical integrity. 20% of 18 to 20-year-old ladies have said that have suffered online sexual harassment. And this is all to say that access to new technologies and this new type of violence, once again, has an impact on public life and the exhibition of women. Because sometimes they make a step back and they decide not to participate in order to stop exposing to this type of violence. So we need to legislate, we need to make research, we need to create more accurate public policies. And I would like to say that, as regards Me Too, this campaign has highlighted the importance of sexual harassment in the labor work, we still don't have the perfect snapshot. And here there was an important focus on the situation that some women journalists and activists live in terms of cyber harassment. 38% of women journalists admit to self-censor themselves because of suffering online harassment. So I think it is very important to underline this fact in terms of going back to get out of the public exposure because of the violence that we are suffering.
Vale, esto sobre violencia lo salto, en todo caso lo hablamos después.
Keep this about violence, but it is what has to do with the conference, with the access to justice, etc. And I'm going to skip maybe many of the topics can be tackled with the Q&As. Yeah.
Evidentemente, por eso salto el tema de participación.
Skip the political participation, but I would like to end up with 3 messages. The ones that have to do with backlash and the setback in terms of equality between men and women. We are in a situation where the ratification of the Istanbul Convention is key. But we find that the Istanbul Convention is being rejected by anti-gender, anti-feminist movements in some member states. These movements are questioning the main principles of the feminist agenda. They're questioning the concept of gender, and they call for concepts that are newly coined concepts for all of us, like, for example, gender ideology, etc. But really speaking, we are considering the progress in terms of equality and empowering of women. So, we have the no progress in terms of sexual and reproductive rights, and as regards abortion, well, it's a matter of concern. There hasn't been progress about that, and some specific groups, like for example, LGBTI groups, etc., are dealing with it. We have identified these groups that we have scientific evidences that say that, well, they relate them with the attempts to move the women organizations to feminist movements and in terms of equality. Regarding social and civil society and feminist groups, we would like to say that we've detected a trend that says that in 2008 the economic crisis has been used, or is still being used, as an excuse in some member states in order not to go back to financing situations before the economic crisis. There were some financing lines and systems in many countries for the civil or society organizations, and after the economic crisis in 2008 we have not been able to go back to the previous situation. And regarding institutional mechanisms of equality, well, ministries, we are finalizing specific research that will be launched in November, and we hope that they can inform about the whole process. I would like to say just that our questions analyze the trends that we detect. We detected in 2013 report, and it was about to see how the priority in gender equality was being linked to other ways of discrimination, So they were facing a discriminatory model and not a proactive public policy model, together with other inequalities. We hope to have information about the impact that this has had, the different equality engines, and the same with social, civil society, etc. Sorry for the delay.
Es muy difícil, yo no entiendo. Yo que tú me quedaba aquí a dormir porque te van a hacer una cantidad.
I would stay here to sleep because I think that they will ask you many questions. Okay, so it's very difficult to cut the essence of all these things, because what is not measured does not exist. This report is being very important for every single request. Maybe the recommendations that you have, etc., about how to move on together, but well, in my case, I see that what is not measured does not exist. To convince, you need to have this type of work. So let's move on to the Q&A session. 2 questions. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentations. I'm Rosa Vela, and I'm here. I participate at different platforms in Andalusia and on a national and regional international scale. It's just a reflection.
Con la presentación y las afirmaciones que se han hecho desde la mesa.
Everything that has been said, well, there's a reality that civil society and feminist organizations are facing. On the one hand, we see that gender equality is something key for the European Union, and on the other hand, we find the data and the presentation that we've just seen. So, how is it possible to say or to reject that reality that does not appear on migration policies or safety policies, internal policies, the outsourcing, the borders outsourcing, even when financing the enabling of shelter houses, they do not fulfill the guidelines that we know, to have lights, to have separated bathrooms, so that there are no assaults. Impunity, silence culture, even in the European Parliament. Now, we know, thanks to the Me Too movement, we know that thanks to this movement. So, despite all the information, the European institutions, and despite all the efforts and progress that they're having at the level of discussion and policies in the EU resolutions that are being passed, etc., where these anti-right movements are progressing, this is a reality, and we have member states that are there. So what measures, apart from reaffirming the great priority that is gender equality, are being taken by states and the European Union, and what measures are being taken to penalize the unfulfillment of the regional international commitments, and to force them fulfill these commitments.
Okay, would you answer any, one more question, and then you will answer both questions. Well, this was not a question, really, it was a comment. She said it was a remark. Okay, who wants to ask? I can't see. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the floor. I'm Lucia Mazarrosa from the Feminist Policy Representative, and I would like you to make an emphasis on common policies to eradicate the prostitution lobby, the lobby of sexual reproduction, that is wombs, well, also the pimps market and the market of the wombs for rent. And the same as in many cases, it is the country that is being sanctioned for other types of things. We also need to penalize those countries that favor all these, well, prostitution problems and pimps and these rental rooms. Okay, one more question. Hello. My name is Manuela Mesa. I am a director of the PATH and president of WILD Spain. And I have a very specific question for Luigia. I would like you to comment on the European strategic approach on women, peace and security. So, at which extent this instrument that has been updated in 2018 is going to be articulated with the BEIJING+5 platform? Because I was surprised that you didn't mention any of this, and it is the tool or the instrument that we consider more important for the European Union, and I would like to get to know this in better detail. Thank you. Who wants to start? Sí.
All the questions. Yeah, I know. Okay, I will start from perhaps the most difficult question. I mean, again, as I mentioned, the point is that you referred to the EU policy on migration, the situation of detention center. I mean, there are many situations, where we can really discuss and question the role of the European Union. The point is that unfortunately, including on migration, the EU has not an exclusive competence. So this is the point. The point is that that we need to deal and we can impose the line on our member states. Our member states have a clear obligation in terms of human rights, and this is crystal clear from a legal point of view. It's enough to look at the EU treaty, but the point is that in reality, we try to do our best to make sure that the human rights of everyone with no discrimination are promoted and respected. I can say that, because of my work, I had the opportunity to attend many Foreign Affairs Council, a lot of, council meeting on different topics. And when you are there, you understand that, it's really difficult to join and, to adopt a common position because of the attitude of some member states. Despite that, as the EU, there is no intention and no will to do step back, So there are some, agreed language, some agreed position, and we don't want to touch them, So honestly, I think that, and I can understand that it's not enough, and I think that we can really do more. But the point is that in the current situation, in the current configuration, we are trying to do our best with the means that we have at our disposal. And it's really a daily battle, believe me, even for the simply adoption of a new statement, there are a lot of discussion really related to single word, So there are some member states, I give you an example. I think that there was in reference to the discussion on the definition of gender equality, and I see in the last months an attempt to go back to the dichotomy definition of gender, between men and women, that it's not acceptable. But, as the EU, we push back, our ambition is to ensure equality for all, including for LGBTI person, but still you need to be vigilant, extremely vigilant, and to push back and attempt to go back to this binary definition of gender, which means that, we are leaving someone behind. So, unfortunately, I understand that in terms of public message, we can be easily under, criticism, and I can understand. But believe me, the internal discussion are extremely articulated. So, again, I think that even we also try to maximize your work as CSO because, in the majority of the case, we need evidence, we need data confirming the situation is occurring in our member states and outside. But again, it's not an easy time, both internally but even in international context. In terms of the question on violence, sexual violence, including within the European institutions, sexual harassment, unfortunately, is a reality. It's true that in 2017, we took a major step with the signature of the Istanbul Convention. The Istanbul Convention can be a new step for the European Union because, it frames the legal context and gives and oblige all member states to adapt their law, to adapt their policy framework, and also to dedicate ad hoc funding to eliminate, but before eliminating, to prevent all forms of violence against women, including domestic violence that, unfortunately, including in my country, remain a widespread phenomenon. So I'm again, in a very transparent way, as of June 2019, only 21 member states out of 28 ratified the Istanbul Convention, and the European Union is taking steps to complete the EU accession to the Istanbul Convention. But again, even for the EU ratification, it's a complicated internal process because we are in a context where we don't have an exclusive competence. We have a shared competence with our member states, and we really need to to negotiate our accession. But for example, I had the opportunity at the time last year of the Bulgarian presidency of the European Union. At the beginning of the semester, Bulgaria made clear that the ratification of the Istanbul Convention was a clear priority. Then, unfortunately, because of a number of internal situations, the situation was, no real progress were made. But I can say that as the EU, the point is systematically raised, and we try to reach out member states who still need to take the necessary step from a legal point of view to ratify the convention, to provide also the technical assistance, the legal assistance to make this a reality. The objective that we have is, from the EU side, is to complete our ratification in 2020. So I hope that it's a reasonable, realistic, let's say, timeline. And on women, peace and security, yes, I think that it's a good point because in 2018 we indeed renewed the policy framework because it was adopted in 2018, the new comprehensive approach to women, peace and security, and in June we adopted the action plan on women, peace and security. So the action plan is a document indicated and listing a number of concrete actions to implement the policy framework. Keep in mind that all people from the different EU services work together because in order to monitor progress and to report on the implementation, we included also indicators, benchmark. And the point is that we are in a moment that we have such an articulated policy framework that we need to harmonize also the indicator within the broader framework of the 2030 agenda. And indeed, if you have the opportunity to look at the action plan, the indicators there are part and reflect the logic of the indicators of the 2030 agenda. One point is that my boss Federica Mogherini made clear that the policy framework on women, peace and security is, is part and parcel of the policy framework on gender equality. I mean, our line is consistent, and wherever we act in a stable situation, in a conflict, a post-conflict situation. So you should consider the women, peace and security agenda and action plan really part of the broader framework on gender equality. Thank you.
So, contestas brevemente, después hay un café y podemos...
She will answer very briefly. There is a coffee break later, and you will be able to have face-to-face conversations. Well, very briefly, an answer to these first two questions. The elected president for the European Commission has stated very clearly in her speech that we are going to have a strategy for gender equality between men and women, and we hope that it's going to be binding. This is the first condition or the first requirement in order to be able to advance. At the same time, she has stated a commitment so that the European Union ratifies the Istanbul Convention. And in terms of, there's a second ratification in terms of violence against women, with all the details that my colleague has commented on. And thirdly, when she has presented the proposal of her cabinet for the commissioner, she has proposed a specific commissioner for gender equality. If these 3 points or these 3 proposals are confirmed, then we have a horizon from 2022 or 2021 to 2027. Why am I speaking of such a wide or extensive timeline? Because now the budget for 2021 to 2027 are being negotiated now in the European Union, and therefore we have business or negotiation tables that, not business, negotiation tables that are being held now, and if we cannot implement the agenda proposals, then we won't see any advancement in the following years. And I want to make a call for the importance, or to the importance of civil society in the follow-up and the monitoring of the processes, the budgetary processes. They are created with a language that is really difficult to have an access to the terminology. We're talking about the funding and the financing framework, the structural funds, etc. This is the second European semester, but the role in terms of fiscalization or taxation, and also the role of the civil society to see how this gender mainstreaming is being carried out. In this sense, I encourage all of you so that we can deepen on these topics, and also because it is an element by the European Commission that's going to be presented for the first time within the future framework. The European semester is being linked to the social agenda now, which has been agreed on the European Pillar of Social Rights, which has a specific pillar for gender equality. And therefore, there's going to be a set of specific recommendations in the European semester to the European members linked to the equality agenda, and thus, hence the role of civil societies here. The monitoring role is so essential. Thank you very much. Now let's give time for the coffee break. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Perfecto. Muchas gracias.